So just some other housekeeping things and to set some intentions. This presentation today is to update you all on what's been going on, what work we've been doing, and progress that we've been making. The core team listed here is really excited to have you all. This was definitely a while in planning on our end. And so after the updates, we will have time for questions. So if you have questions as we go along, please let us know at the end. We're really happy and excited to answer any questions you have. And if there's anything that comes up afterwards as well, please feel free to reach out. We are more than happy to continue to connect with you all. Just in terms of some little housekeeping things, if you want to check your Zoom name and just make sure that it is your name, that way folks know who you are, that would be great. Just another reminder to mute yourselves when others are speaking. And that should be it for what we kind of housekeeping. We're gonna start off with reintroducing the core team personally, so that for all of y'all who may have been here before, just a reintroduction to the folks that have been at the table for a while. But then there are some new folks like myself who can introduce myself to you all, let you know who I am. And if any of you are new, you'll get to know some of our team that's really working on the ground on this project. So for this, I think we can just do quick introductions for the core team. Ed Rumbald is not here from BLM. Maybe Andy could do us a favor of introducing Ed, but let's just say our name, the organization that we're from, and what role we're playing in the core team. And I will go last and maybe hand it off to Andy if he'd like to start us off.
Can you all hear me? I'm running through some computer issues right now.
I think so, Andy. Yep.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, I'm just having a little IT issues right now, so I apologize for that. But I'm Andy Borick. I'm the Outdoor Upland Recreation Coordinator for the Bureau of Land Management Kremling Field Office. I supervise the North Sandhills. And oh, is this going to work finally? Hey, there we go. I supervise the North Sandhills, and primarily serve as the advisor to this group to make sure they understand the needs of recreationalists on the North Sandhills and try to kind of balance that with on the ground efforts for restoration.
Thanks, Andy. Would you mind introducing Ed, even though he's not here?
Yeah, so Ed is a member of the state office for the Bureau of Land Management for Colorado. He works in fisheries and habitat restoration work. I haven't worked with Ed all that much besides this project, so I can't really comment that much on him. But that's all you got, really. Sorry.
No, that's great. Thank you, Andy. Courtney, would you like to go next?
Hello, my name is Courtney Massey. I'm a biologist for Ducks Unlimited. I handle a lot of our implementation grants and partner coordination.
Thanks, Courtney. John?
Hi, all. I'm super excited to see you all here. I see a bunch of names on the attendance window here that I haven't seen and connected with in a long time. And I want to say hello to all of you and super excited that you're able to be here, and a bunch of you that I would like to connect with one-on-one if I could, but we don't have the time today. But anyway, very grateful that you all are here. Excited about this presentation. I'm John Sanderson. I'm with the Center for Collaborative Conservation at Colorado State University. And I've been from CSU's involvement, for the CCC's involvement, I've been of the three people on this call from the Center for Collaborative Conservation. Actually, there might be four of us. Allison might be on the call as well. She is, I see her. And I'm the one that's been engaged in this the longest, since very late 2019, early 2020. And I might say my job in this partnership is chief connective tissue, because I've talked with all of you at some point or another, and I've just been kind of part of a small part of all of the many parts that we have going on in all of this. And today I'm going to be talking specifically about the monitoring plan that I coordinated.
Thanks, John. Julia? Uh-oh. We can't hear you, Julia. Oh no. All right, well, while Julia maybe troubleshoots and hopefully can sort that out. Benji, would you want to go?
Sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Benji Duke. I'm the Conservation Stewardship Program Director for the Gates Family Ranches. And the Gates Family Ranches, there are 4 ranches, 3 of which that are in Wyoming and 1 state line ranch located in northern Colorado. And so on this partnership, I'm representing the private land owner associated with the water rights tied to North Sand Creek and the restoration work that'll be happening primarily down at the site of the Headgate. But we've been very involved in this partnership for a long time, and very excited to see some traction now in progress with this group and partnership and the commitment to restoring North Sand Creek. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Benji. To give Julia just a couple more seconds.
Can you
Oh,
hear me now?
yes.
Okay.
Awesome.
Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. I am dog sitting, as you can see, so don't mind them. But my name is Julia. I am the North Sand Creek project assistant. I help a lot on the administrative side of the project. You know, there's a lot of documents and data we have going on for this. So, you know, trying to organize the chaos is kind of my whole deal here.
Thank you, Julia. And she has been, along with everybody, but super helpful to us. And it's really great to have a CSU student jumping in and making waves, I think, with our team. So thanks, Julia. I'm Ariana Rashke. I've met some of you, but not all of you in the past. And I hopped onto this project pretty much late last year to help John and the CCC's work around convening. And Allison is here as well. She's not necessarily presenting, but with her and Julia, we're also working on some outreach to the OHV users along with Andy. So a big portion of the CCC team is involved in this project and we're super excited about it. So I'm really happy to be here with you all. All right, so for the next probably 40 to 50 minutes or so, we're going to be kind of going into some depth and updating you all on different portions of the project. We'll take turns doing so that you can hear from the folks who have the most expertise around each piece. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have time at the end for questions. So I'm going to hand off to Julia first to give us just a little context for a reminder for some, and then maybe some new information for others who may be new. Are you ready, Julia?
Yes, I sure am.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. So basically, first and foremost, the North Sand Creek lived up to its name. In the early 2010s, there started to be issues with sand buildup in the creek, sedimentation buildup in North Sand Creek, that was building up at State Line's Headgate, and you'll hear a little bit more about that later from Benji. But there was an issue where essentially the flow of the stream was in question, and there was some conflict over how to manage the creek specifically. And, you know, a lot of the stakeholders involved didn't have a lot of great communication, as was revealed by the interviews that our good friend Nicole Reese at the CCC conducted. Each of our stakeholders came together and talked about interests and talked about the things that they care about in this creek, because each has a deep connection to this land and to the creek on it. And the interviews that Nicole did, and then a meeting in Walden in 2022, revealed that everyone involved felt strongly that they could work together, that this was an opportunity to collaborate and to create something that, you know, a variety of people could come together and enjoy and work toward as a collective. And as this process continued, they essentially used this opportunity to write proposals and create documents collaboratively as an equal partnership between all of the stakeholders, that they could find things that matter to everyone. And in this case, our partnership decided that we have 3 core objectives in this endeavor together. And you will hear a little bit more about those objectives from some of our other presenters today. But this story is really one that proves how strong unlikely partnerships can be. We can grow something that connects a lot of people and that creates social capital in a field where we really need to be able to work together, and create something that, you know, we're all gathered together today to talk about and has given so many folks opportunities to see the power of collaboration come out of a situation that had conflict in the past.
All right, thank you, Julia. So I'm going to quickly cover some of the current funding that we have, and this will lead into the updates that we'll get afterwards around the work that we've been able to do. Before I jump into this and give you all a chance to look at some of these numbers, I do want to just thank all of the funders. I think a couple of folks are here, but we're just really grateful to all the support that we've gotten for this project. As Julia said, I think it's really given us an opportunity not only to get things done on the ground, but to build this partnership and the relationships that have really meant a lot. So thank you to all of the funders. So looking at this, some of the things, the first 2 grants, especially the Colorado Healthy Rivers Fund, the first one, they're on there twice, and the Colorado Water Conservation Board. These 2 grants have really supported a lot of our planning efforts around this, including the collaborative process, which takes a lot of, you know, sort of energy and planning, and to continue to convene the group and all of that. But additionally, this funding has helped us to sort of establish our sedimentation and vegetation monitoring in this area, which is super important for the work and the impact that we're trying to have. It has also helped to fund some feasibility work around sort of implementation within the stream, and to really put in the capacity to find funding for this work, because as you all know, that takes quite a bit of work as well. As well as an outreach plan for the OHV users that are having an impact on the ground, but also for our partners and the many stakeholders in this area. We really want to build relationships with everyone that's connected to this land, which is partially why we're all here today as well. And through this planning funding, we have also gotten support to start the design for some of the in-stream structures that Courtney will talk about a little bit later. And then the Gates Frontiers Foundation, they gave us a wonderful amount of money, which is really supporting several things, but one of the big pieces is that convening support. So this has funded a lot of the Center for Collaborative Conservation's work on this project, and we're really grateful for that. But it's also funding some of the events that we're planning, such as the field trips, and some of you may have heard about one we're hoping to plan soon about that. We also have some case study and communications funding through the Gates Frontiers Fund that we're really excited about. And there's also a healthy piece from this that's funding a graduate student who's out on the ground doing some research on this sort of work for us. That's really amazing. And then the last 2 grants, The Colorado Healthy Rivers Fund, the second one, and the 319 grant, they are funding our implementation work. So that includes the hydrology and sediment monitoring that John will talk about, as well as the drone flights, and also funding for potential revegetation and the installation of the low-tech in-channel features, again, that Courtney will talk about. And the one piece that we really don't have a section on today, but we will in the future, is the outreach and education piece for the OHV users. Andy will talk a little bit about their BLM's work on the ground, and in the future, Allison Brody and the CCC will have some further updates on that. But yeah, this is where we stand today. There's still more to be done. And we're, for example, looking for funding to bring out a group of bilingual students to help with that OHV outreach. But, you know, there's a lot to be done. And again, we're super, super thankful to all the funders for all this support so far. It's really amazing. All right, so with that said, I'm going to hand off to John, and he's going to speak to the monitoring plans that we mentioned and what that has started to look like. Oh, you're muted, John.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you, Ariana. I'm also going to give a little bit of a sort of a big picture overview of what we're doing that will set up the people who are talking at the end of this presentation on individual components. Also want to Ariana's point about the unnamed graduate student. That unnamed graduate student is actually on this call. It's Dylan Davis, waving to us. Hey, Dylan. And I had the privilege of spending all day at North Sand Creek with Dylan on Saturday. And so really happy to have Dylan as part of this effort. And this first picture here, what I want to say with this slide is thank you to everyone who has helped with this monitoring plan. One of the things I love about this project and this partnership, and one of the things that I find challenging about it, is that it's got so many different parts. This is a really unusual context for any conservation work in Colorado, because it's on a sand dune system, of which we have exactly 3 in Colorado, one down in the San Luis Valley at the Great Sand Dunes. And Andrew Valdez, who has been working down there for a lot of years, doing excellent work to understand dunes and creeks and their interactions. Andrew's on the call as well today. So the context is really unusual, but then also because it passes from public land, from federal land through state land, through private land, and back onto public land and into private land. And there's a social component and there's an ecological component. It's just got a whole bunch of different moving parts that make this project really fascinating. And I think we're learning a lot here, and we will continue to learn a lot about this unusual place, at the same time that the ultimate goal is to restore the creek and to restore the ability of State Line Ranch to use their water right. The list of folks on this table is the range of people who are involved in the monitoring and helped. When I said I coordinated the monitoring plan, I mean that all of these individuals had some contribution to that plan. And Courtney, who's listed second on this list, and I brought together all of these individuals to put things together into a comprehensive monitoring plan, which I will tell you about just briefly here. Next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit of context. Joni and Jamie, who are on this call as well, down at the Colorado CDPHE, the Division of Public Health and Environment. They gave me some fantastic feedback on the first draft of this monitoring plan. And one of the first things they asked for was, please give us the context, the bigger context. And this is the bigger context right here. You see Walden, Colorado in the bottom of this picture. And the North Sand Hills in the very upper, just a little bit right of center. There's another sand dune system called East Sand Hills that you see over there on the east side of this picture. It's about 10, 12 miles or so to the southeast. In some ways, very comparable systems. Biggest difference being that at North Sand Hills, there is public access for off-highway vehicle use, and East Sand Hills, there is no off-highway vehicle use. It's actually a state natural area. And so East Sand Hills provides a nice reference point for comparison to North Sand Hills. Okay, if you want to, well, let me say that creek at the top you see running from right to left comes out of the Rewa Mountains on the east side of North Park. It flows west off public land onto private land, as I said, through State Line Ranch and then into the Canadian River that then goes just a short distance before flowing into the North Platte. Next slide, please. And in this project, we have three major components, which they're labeled, the first two are labeled BMP, stands for Best Management Practice. These are terms we used in the context of our work with CDPHE. And then down, of course, at the bottom, the diversion rehabilitation is a really important piece of this. But it's really important to understand that we do have three components to this project, and every one of them is essential. Starting at the top, where BLM has been working hard since before 2019, but I mentioned 2019 because they took some very important action in that year to install a fence that I refer to here as a 20-acre exclosure. This is an area in green on the right, the green outline on the right side of this image that was formerly open to off-highway vehicle use. After concerns were expressed by State Line Ranch about sediment in the stream, the BLM concluded that this area in green was the most sensitive area, and it's a steep dune slope right above the creek and likely contributing a lot of that sediment to the creek. So they created this exclosure to exclude this fenced area to exclude off-highway vehicles from this particularly sensitive area. Andy's going to tell us more about that work in a little bit. But the larger area you see in that kind of dark purple maroony color is the first component of this work, which is dune stabilization. And maintenance and enforcement of that fence is really, really important. We may do some planting in there. That's still to be determined. But the larger area is also included around that fenced area because that's where the outreach with the off-highway vehicle user community is really important. And the goal up there is to return that dune area, the sensitive dune area that's contributing most of the sediment into the stream, to a more natural condition where that sediment supply is reduced. So component one, reducing the supply. Component two is stabilizing the stream itself. And because with this increased amount of sedimentation that is coming into the creek as a result of the off-highway vehicle user use. And by the way, sediment does also come into the stream for natural reasons. This is a dune system. Wind blows across the sand dunes and also contributes to the creek. So there are multiple ways that the sand gets into the creek, the OHV use being one of the key ways, at least historically. And that the increase in sediment in the creek led to a destabilization of the creek channel itself and places all along the creek where sand is currently stored in a way where it still remains quite loose, both in the stream channel and along the stream bank. And so you'll hear Courtney later speak a little bit about the consultant we're working with to work on a plan to put structures into the stream and do some planting along the stream to stabilize the stream channel itself. So that design is already in process, and the first phase of that work is going to happen in September with a bunch of volunteers being led by wildland restoration volunteers. And then finally, and very importantly, down there on the left side at State Line at their point of diversion, that diversion structure is currently buried under sand right now and non-functional, and that the functionality of that diversion structure has to be returned. I'm sorry, Benji's going to speak a little bit about that in a short bit. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of what has happened so far. This is what the fence looks like on that, what I've called the exclosure. To the right and on the near side of us is still accessible to highway vehicles. Inside the fence, those vehicles are prohibited. You can already see inside the fence, without any active revegetation or anything like that inside the fence, inside the fence is already naturally recovering on its own. You can see more structure in the sand itself, and you can also see sparse but nonetheless very noticeable vegetation, especially if you're actually on the ground and looking close. You can see a bunch of plants scattered across this upper portion of the dune. Next slide, please. You can also see plants that have grown in lower down on the slope on the left and in the stream channel. This has all happened since the fence went in, where you get this on the left there, you see an aspen tree growing up out of the dunes and a bunch of grass in front of that aspen tree. And then in the channel itself, in this spot that you see in the photo on the right, prior to the fence going in, off-highway vehicle users could go up and down this channel and up and down the slope to the right. Because of the fence, we now have dead wood accumulating in the stream, and that has a really important ecological role to play, even though it's not living. It's still, functionally speaking, really important. And we also have a bunch of willows and aspen growing up right in the channel itself. And all of this has happened since the fence was installed in 2019. Next slide. And this is just a preview. This is not at North Sand Creek. This is up on the South Fork of the Poudre River, in an area where they're doing similar stream restoration work. This is the type of structure that we will be installing at North Sand Creek. It's all natural, no metal or steel involved. It's basically mimicking the natural process of large and small wood and logs and sticks and branches that build up in the stream. And then if you're on this spot right here, you will also see a bunch of willow stems that were thrown into this structure. This was installed just last fall, so those willows haven't started growing. But there's at this particular spot, there are about 15 or 20 of these structures. And what these do is they slow down the water and they begin to stabilize the stream banks on either side, and a whole bunch of other stuff as well that these structures do. So this is something that is, it's sort of a preview of what we will be doing in North Sand Creek. Next slide, please. And component 3 is restoration, rehabilitation of that diversion structure. This is what it looked like last summer when we were out there. The diversion ditch is on the left there, and you can see that there's a big pile of sand right down the middle of this image that State Line Ranches had to pull out of that ditch in order to make it functional. And the headgate itself is, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 feet behind where the person taking this photo was standing. And as I mentioned earlier, that headgate is still completely buried under sand. Next photo. Okay, so monitoring plan. It's an unusual stream system, as I mentioned, so we've got a bunch of different components. It's a complex project that each of these components is speaking to. We worked closely with CDPHE to put this together, and that long list of partners that I started with. Because it's unusual, we weren't able to just adopt purely standard approaches. So some of the things we're doing here are standard, and some of them we made up pulling from published peer-reviewed literature in order to get different kinds of insights that the standard approaches wouldn't provide for us. So we start with stream flow. That is a standard approach. The two creeks, an ephemeral tributary that only flows for a few weeks each summer, and a perennial continuously flowing stretch of North Sand Creek. We have monitoring points on both of those, actually up in the forest, just a little bit east of the dunes. And we're going to be measuring stream flow continuously over time to really understand how much water is coming into this system and when. A very, very important component is sediment. And what we want to know about sediment is, where does it build up? Where is it lost? Where does it get depleted? And what's the total amount of sediment that's moving through this stream system? And we're approaching sediment with two main components. One is drone-based LiDAR. For those of you who don't know LiDAR, it's basically a radar system that allows us to get a very high resolution topographic map. So we can map out the elevation of the ground surface. And then we're going to do that twice this year, and again a couple of years from now, to be able to see where has sediment built up and how much has been deposited down at the diversion point, where did it move along the stream system itself, and several other components that we'll be able to get insights into with this drone-based LiDAR. And then we're complementing that drone-based LiDAR with ground-based estimates. This is the work that Dylan is doing, is going to contribute to this, to be able to kind of have those two components, the drone work and the ground-based work, complement each other, so we can really get as close of an estimate as possible to the dynamics of the sand and how much is moving down the creek over time. The third big piece is the vegetation cover. I mentioned this earlier. Our friends at Denver Botanic Garden, a couple of them on this phone call, are working on this to use a different set of imagery from the drone to map vegetation at both North Sand Hills and East Sand Hills, to compare how North Sand Hills is doing relative to that reference condition where there's not OHV use. And so they'll be mapping the drone imagery, and they'll be doing some field work to verify those maps, to ground truth those maps, and to characterize in detail what the vegetation looks like in those places. And then if they conclude that the vegetation at North Sand Hills, it's recovering, but is it recovering fast enough to get us quickly to a reference condition? They're going to be doing that comparison, and it may be, although still remains to be determined, if we want to do some proactive work with vegetation on that, or other approaches to stabilizing the dunes within that fence system. Stream water quality. This is a standard approach as well to monitoring for stream health. We're going to be particularly looking at nitrogen and phosphorus. Nitrogen and phosphorus aren't directly related to this work that we're doing with the partnership, but there's two standard things that we want to know about all across Colorado. So as long as we're monitoring in North Sand Creek, in a part of the world that does not have a lot of good data on water quality, we're going to go ahead and collect some samples to be able to understand what's happening with nitrogen and phosphorus. And it could be that there's a link between nitrogen and phosphorus and the sediment dynamics as well. Last but not least, the Bureau of Land Management has a program that they call Assessment, Inventory, and Monitoring, where they do routine monitoring of streams all across the West in order to understand what a healthy stream looks like and how they're changing over time. And last year, Colorado Natural Heritage Program helped us establish an aim point on the tributary of North Sand Creek in order to start creating that baseline data. And that's going to be another point that helps us understand overall what's happening in this creek ecosystem. Next slide, please. So project timing, I've mentioned some of this already, but just to be clear, the fence installation was done in 2018. Fence maintenance and off-highway, OVH, that should be OHV community engagement is ongoing. It's really going to hit the ground this summer. Log jam, the stream restoration work is being planned. There will be a phase 1 this fall for the stream restoration work, phase 2 next late summer, fall. Maybe future years, that's still to be determined. The diversion rehabilitation planning is going on right now for that, but the actual work on that is still to be determined. Benji will speak a little bit more to that, and I already mentioned the possible work on sand dune revegetation, also to be determined. And then the monitoring is set up to bracket the interventions that we're doing. So particularly the work that we're going to be doing in the channel late 2025, meaning late summer, fall of 2025, and then again in 2026. The monitoring of sediment and these other components is particularly designed to bracket the installation of those structures. We are starting with all of this monitoring this summer. We actually started a little bit last summer, but we're really going all in this summer. And then some of this work will continue through next year. And then the whole suite of it will be repeated in 2027 after we've done the restoration work. Next slide, please. And I share this only to give you some insights into how challenging this monitoring work could be. I don't know if you appreciate how complex this is, but we have to deal with all kinds of factors that we're not even that surprise us, including a mama bear that is apparently, I don't know, sniffing or scratching her nose on the post that is holding up this this measuring stick that we're using to understand sediment in the creek. And I think that is my last slide.
Thanks, John. Well, if no one has questions later, I have questions about this bear to ask at the end. Thank you so much. So I think the next person we have up to speak about BLM and the work he's doing is Andy. Andy, are you ready to go? Oh, you're muted. There we go.
Like as soon as I turned on my video, it automatically muted my microphone, which was fantastic. So just some quick updates on the dune stabilization. Well before my time with the BLM, this, as John mentioned, was established as a critical need to kind of control the steeper portions of the dune, especially as it impacts that tributary to North Sand Creek, which is where all of the impact from any recreational use is going to be felt. I was just up there last weekend. That tributary is not currently running or flowing, and I'm not sure if it will this year. They had a pretty light winter in Jackson County. So the fence, you can see, has been improved significantly from its initial inception in 2016. There you can see just a very basic ranching fencing with almost invisible wire, which is quite dangerous, rather, if you're on a fast four-wheel drive machine. And so lower down in the lower section, you can see where it looks like now. And it's large 8-foot diameter, or 8-foot in length post with steel cable. It's very visible with reflectors, and it's a constant fun battle, as Ian in the forefront of that picture is demonstrating, where the wind blows, covers our fence lines. We have to constantly be raising them and maintaining our fence lines to make sure we were maintaining the protection in these areas. As it was mentioned, we do have a good amount of outreach actions happening, mostly in the form of kiosks and interpretive panels. You can go to the next slide for me, please. there's been a pretty significant change in the demographic use of the user group for the North Sandhills. I would say 10 to 15 years ago, your typical Dune user is going to be um, white guy, motorhead kind of a thing who likes to play around with his power sports toys. But in the last 10 years, very aggressively has the demographic user changed to a more of a Hispanic or Latina culture, and that has completely displaced the historical users. And obviously, recreation is open to everyone. The challenge, though, is that our interpretive signage is not geared for bilingual use. And so really a big thanks to this program for getting us the funding and helping us design bilingual signage, which is going to go up this summer for the North Sandhills to help explain some of the rules of the road and how to ride safely to this new user demographic. And that's the biggest challenge that we're kind of running into right now, is just being able to kind of bridge that communication barrier and instill a conservation mindset into a lot of these new users. A lot of them are new to public lands, new to motorized recreation, and they don't speak the language. And so establishing that mindset of conservation and responsible use of public lands is pretty paramount. I don't quite have all the answers for that yet, but we do what we can when we can. And so new signage will go a long way for that. In these photos on the left, we're installing new section of fencing to protect some of our areas of dune vegetation that isn't related to the creek itself, but it's all within the closure area for riding. In the upper right-hand area, this was just from 2 weeks ago. It just kind of demonstrated to me, again, this user group, if they see any opportunity, even if the fence is clearly in place and that one post just happened to rot out and snap over, they will take that opportunity and drive directly over the fencing and directly into the closure area. It takes absolutely nothing. There were 3 people at the dunes this day that I was working up there, and there's 3 people riding a 5,000 acre OHV park, and all 3 of them drove over that fence directly next to the sign that says restoration area, please stay out. So this is just the user group that we're working with. It's a real challenge to work with them. I'm hoping that more clear signage will help. So far, the only thing that really has been very effective is aggressive fencing and monitoring of that fencing. That's best I can really offer. We can go to the next slide. That might be my last one. Oh yeah, a couple more pictures here. Just of us doing some work. You can see, like John mentioned, this is a different section of the dune that he was showing you earlier on the top left there, where we're raising that fence, and you can see that there's vegetation coming back on the right side of the fence in the closed area. So the fences are working quite well to restore vegetation. We just need to keep maintaining them and keep on them. The challenge, of course, is staffing, and all federal agencies right now are just in absolute crisis mode. I have no staff. Last summer I had a staff of 6, and I have none this summer at all. And I don't know how to fix that. I can't fix that for this summer season. It is what it is. So happy to answer any questions at the end here, but my role in this is to continually try to represent recreational users of the Sandhills and make sure that they have access to this area. It's been utilized for motorized recreation since the 70s, and it will continue to be so. It's managed for motorized recreation. That's the primary use of this area. It's not for grazing, it's not for restoration, it's for recreation from the government's point of view. And so that's what we'll manage it for, providing for vegetative response and the health of the ecosystem. That's all I got.
Thanks, Andy. Really interesting story to tell there, and I appreciate your candor as well. At least for me, my mind is with you all, and any way we can help, let us know.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. So I think up next we have Courtney. Courtney, are you ready to go?
I am. And I'll start by saying that even though this is one of the meatier parts of our project at this time. My overview is going to be pretty high level, just given where we are kind of in the process. So this 2025 field season is going to be our first time kind of doing on the ground implementation. Last summer, we had some really good baseline monitoring, some initial assessment that John went over very in depth. But this is our first season kind of actually throwing stuff into the creek and seeing how it goes. And so we're really excited to be working with Sean Connor, which is a name you might recognize. He is a very established veteran in the kind of in-stream process-based restoration space. These days, he almost exclusively does exactly what we brought him onto this team to do, which is kind of site assessment and design, identifying what structures should go where and kind of the best implementation strategy for the landscape. We're also working with wildlands restoration volunteers for the actual implementation events in this field season. And that is 2 in-stream I guess I should say restoration weekends, because it is multi-day events. But we have 2 weekends on the calendar in September that we're going to get out there with about 30 volunteers from WRV for each weekend, and actually start building these structures in stream. Given where we are in the process, we just kind of got these folks on board late last month, in all the legal ways. We've been having conversations with them and going through the procurement process for several months now, but we just kind of fully built our team together late last month. And Sean actually first got out on the site to start doing a site assessment, and the initial groundwork needed to put together a preliminary design last week. So excited to debrief with him and see how all of that went and everything he learned. Moving forward into the next couple months of the summer ahead of these implementation events, we're working on the necessary things for compliance, staging, all of those pieces, obviously. And then there will also be more opportunities for kind of feedback and keeping up with this part of our project once we have a better understanding of what kinds of structures, how many, where exactly our priority areas are across the landscape for this initial season. All of those little pieces that are really critical to what we're going to do in September, but are still kind of developing as this team kind of finds their footing on the project landscape. So that's all I really have to share for now, but you'll hear more about this in the next couple months for sure.
Thanks, Courtney. I know there's a lot of behind the scenes work that you all have been doing, so thank you for all of that. It's not easy to show on a slide, but it's meaningful and we couldn't do this without you. So thank you. All right. And I think we are on to Benji. Benji, are you ready to go?
Yep, I am. Thank you. Hey, everyone. So as I mentioned, there are 4 ranches that make up our ranch complex, 3 of which are in Wyoming, 1 in Colorado, State Line Ranch, which is the featured ranch part of this project. And the reason I mention that is that 3 of them are adjacent to each other, and the whole landscape of all 4 of them are managed together. And we're managing our ranches not solely for agriculture, but also for hospitality and conservation. Because each of our operations requires healthy land and ecosystems to support natural resources, including the water and the rangeland and wildlife, the conservation and our efforts and initiatives are really important to us, and they're have been a part of our management practices for decades. And not to go into too much detail, but I do want to refresh everybody a bit on sort of how we got to this point in the partnership and some of our challenges and the timeline that State Line is focused on. So for background, State Line holds water rights on North Sand Creek through the new Sand Creek ditch that carries a very old appropriation date of late 1800s with the adjudicated date 1908. So it's an old water right. The ditch irrigates about 400 acres of a meadow called the South Blankenship. And historically, this meadow was used to raise grass and graze cattle. But since about 2006, the productivity of this meadow has steadily declined, with a real noticeable decrease since about 2010. And by 2016, it was just not practical for us to continue our hay production in South Blankenship. And we transitioned to grazing only because of the loss of haying resources and the challenges the sand deposits were creating. You're probably aware that all water rights holders are required by law to measure and control irrigation water that is diverted, which is very important. This is often performed with a headgate, which is that control feature, and a flume structure, something that you can measure the water from. And due to the geographic position of South Blankenship, the massive amounts of sand were deposited and buried the diversion structures. It's where the water lost its velocity to carry the sand and displaced it, as you can see in the Olivia fan and some of my photos down at the bottom, onto the hay meadow. The magnitude of sand we're dealing with is just really unmanageable and has prevented us from being able to effectively comply with the state water rights regulations. We can just no longer control or measure that water because the structure is under sand. So due to our concerns of losing this water right and a signal to the severity of this issue to all stakeholders, we petitioned for a 303D impaired listing of the creek, which was received and implemented in 2015. And what this listing provided was a temporary solution that ensured the Sand Creek ditch would not appear on the Division of Water Resources abandonment list, basically buying us time to not have to comply with those state regulations. However, that clock is now ticking, and the next abandonment cycle is approaching and will be reviewed in 2030, 5 years from now. Next slide, please. So as John pointed out, phase 3 of this project addressed the restoration needs around the location of the Headgate, is to retain our water right. And in order to retain our water right, we know we need a new structure that can control and measure the water, but we also need a new structure that can better manage sediment transport. We're very hopeful that the restoration work will support this, and there won't be as much of a need to control and manage the sediment. However, I think Sand Creek is a good definition in itself of what is just expected to exist in this creek system. But our options are also exploring for a new structure, moving the point of diversion potentially away and farther away from that deposition zone, re-engineering the ditch and how the water reaches the Headgate, and possibly incorporating additional sediment traps or basins along the lower reach of the creek as it approaches the point of diversion. All of this is very conceptual right now. As this partnership moves from one phase to the next, and we get to phase 3 planning, I think we'll revisit a lot of this, but at least in our minds as the private landowners and the water right holders, it's things that we're thinking about already. We also recognize and support the restoration work being completed upstream as essential components to restoring North Sand Creek and this water right. We've walked the creek numerous times, and there are prime examples of natural wooded structures in the creek that are holding back the sediment, but not impounding the water, which is obviously critical to our purposes, because we wouldn't want something that totally traps sediment and water and no water reach the Headgate or the meadow. So a wooded debris structure in the creek that is just trapping sediment, but allowing the water to flow through to help restore and stabilize the dune slopes in the creek itself is something that we feel very, we feel good about and support as well. The solutions we are considering really are not being made in isolation. And I think that's a really important factor of our planning here. Our approach has been guided by experts and made in collaboration with many members on this partnership, but also some of our own private consultants, Water Rights Council, and organizations like Ducks Unlimited, Courtney's team, who have already developed some preliminary designs that we can look at and hopefully implement in the next few years. the input we've received from this knowledgeable partner group has given us the confidence and also taught us to recognize that certain situations really do require collaboration to be effective. So moving forward, I think our shared commitment to addressing the complexities of Sand Creek is really reinforced by these strong relationships. Though we know as the water rights holders that the clock is ticking, and we really do need to be working towards our goals in this whole restoration process to make sure that at 2030 we don't have to have another conversation with the water control division about the new Sand Creek ditch, and being able to comply with our regulations of being able to control and divert that water and return the effective use of that water for irrigation on the South Blankenship. And a lot of these photos that you've seen in both of the slides are just examples of the volume of sand, I think, and what the meadow has looked like and changed over time. The one on the lower left and in the middle of this screen, I think, is just really impactful photo that demonstrates the attention that we have given to trying to maintain and manage the sand, but just how unmanageable it actually is. And that was 24 hours later after the ditch was cleaned that it changed from the photo on the left to the photo on the right. So I think that is all that I have. So I'll turn it over to Ariana to wrap us up. And then before we open it up to any additional questions.
Thanks, Benji. And thank you for sharing these pictures. I think they tell the story really well. And some I haven't seen. It's really eye-opening. So I think the last thing I'm going to say, because the most important thing is to keep time for all of your questions that you may have, but I just wanted to thank all of the core partners who spoke today, and put the time into this presentation, but also coming to our meetings and everything. And I really appreciate Benji's kind of words about collaboration. I think, it's not easy to do, but it's really important. And so I'm just grateful to everyone here for putting in their expertise and sharing their perspectives. So thank you guys, and also applause. I think it was great.